Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Entitled People. Hope you're all doing awesome today. And as usual, it's time to check out some more Reddit posts, so let's get into it, friends. My mother-in-law photoshopped my husband's nose on our wedding pictures. How do I tell him? I, a 27-year-old female, have been with my husband, 29, for 7 years. I remember that early in our relationship, one of the first things he expressed insecurity about was his nose, specifically about its width. He never wanted surgery, but thinks his nose is too big for his face. I never thought that true, and for a long time I wondered where he'd gotten that idea from. Then I met his mother and all my doubts went out the window. I don't hate her, but the woman complains about everything, and she seems particularly interested in criticizing her sons. Barely anything about my husband or his older brother is good enough for her, and if it is, she is quick to imply they don't deserve it. According to my brother-in-law, that behavior didn't start until father-in-law passed, about 8 years ago, so they don't usually hold it against her. But to me it seems like she legitimately doesn't want her children to be happy. Most times we talk to her, my husband ends up devastated. She constantly complains about me, his job, our apartment, and his appearance. She has on more than one occasion suggested he get a nose job. That tends to upset him, so I always try to shut that down as quickly as possible. We got married in early May. The photos were ready about 2 months later, and we created a shared album on Google Photos for our friends and family, including mother-in-law. I got pregnant during our honeymoon. Can't recommend Dubrovnik enough, and I'm now 24 weeks along. We've had problems with mother-in-law concerning my pregnancy. We're having a boy and she had a breakdown because she wanted a girl. That forced us to put her on an info diet. That was 2 months ago, and she has since improved her behavior. Because of that, we said yes when she invited us to go to a mall near her place to shop for baby clothes last Saturday. My husband had an emergency at work and ended up not coming, but we still managed to have a good time. When we were done, she invited me back to her place. I hadn't been there in a while, and I quickly saw that she'd gotten some of our wedding pictures up on the wall. I instantly noticed something was wrong with them, but I couldn't pinpoint what it was yet. Mother-in-law saw what I was looking at and proudly announced that she'd gotten someone to, quote, fix his nose. In other words, she gave her son a Photoshop nose job on his wedding pictures. I couldn't believe it. I never thought she'd stoop so low. It wasn't even a good nose job. It was so bad that my husband's face didn't look real. He looked like a Ken doll, and not in the hot Ryan Gosling way. Mother-in-law must have seen how mad I got, because she instantly tried to defend herself. She tried to make the point that her son deserved to look his best on his wedding day, and I should have convinced him to get the real nose job before our ceremony. I made up an excuse to leave, but I could tell she knew the real reason. She's been calling and texting me almost every day since. I've been ignoring her, but she's always either apologizing, accusing me of overreacting, or begging me not to tell my husband. I know it seems trivial, but I'm outraged. And the more I think about it, the more disgusted I get. I could never imagine doing something like that to my child. I haven't told my husband yet, mostly because we've both been busy with work this week, but also because I have no idea how to. His mother was finally starting to be a better person around him and his brother, and I know it'll break his heart to find out about this. I don't know what to do. I have to tell him, but I can't figure out how. I know he loves his mother, and I don't want to damage whatever relationship they still have. Mother-in-law also mentioned she intended to send the improved pictures to some of her relatives, so I have to find a way to shut that down. So how can I tell my husband his mother photoshopped his face on our wedding pictures? It's almost comedic how ridiculous that is that someone would do that. For a mother to actually be that ashamed about her own son's nose, that she would go as far as to Photoshop wedding photos. Unfortunately, how you tell him isn't really going to make much of a difference. It's probably going to hurt him either way. The best thing you can do is just be honest with him about what she did. He's going to find out one way or another. This whole situation, OP, is mostly out of your control. The best thing you can do is support your husband. Entitled Dad gets pissy at me for not letting him break the law. I sell archery gear, and bow hunting is highly regulated here. Only pest species are allowed to be hunted, nothing native. This guy calls up and the following conversation occurs. Hi, I just moved here and I want to buy a bow to hunt snakes. Okay, I should probably tell you that it's illegal, I know, but I still want to do it. He knows it's illegal but still asked? Red flag alert. I can't sell you equipment if I know you're going to use it to break the law. Fine, whatever. I'm not going to hunt snakes with it. But you are. You already said you are. At this point, the customer knows he already screwed up by telling me his intentions. Well, how can I move forward with this? He asked. My recommendation is to contact your local pest control services for snake removal if you're having a snake problem. No, I mean, how can I move forward with buying a bow from you? I'm not selling you anything that I know will be used to break the law. I know there are protected species, but I have to protect my kids. I have the right to protect them from dangerous wildlife. There are protected species for a reason. You don't have the right to kill them just because they're dangerous, and I cannot condone the behavior you're advocating for. There are legal ways to deal with this problem. Oh, Mr. High and Mighty over here. You sell equipment knowing that it'll be used to kill innocent Bambis, but a dangerous snake is crossing the line? You're an effing hypocrite. Hunting deer is legal because they are a pest species that destroy native flora and fauna, and they need to be culled as they have no natural predators here. Snakes live here natively and are an important part of the ecosystem. In this circumstance, you're the deer, a dangerous pest species that is a threat to the native wildlife. My kids come first, and you, and the government for protecting snakes. None of you can tell me what to do, and no law is going to stop me from... Goodbye, I said. At that point, I hung up. I understand the desire to protect your kids, but his entitled attitude and complete disregard for the law is unsettling. The original Karen, 1976, gets her car shoved in a ditch by construction workers. As a fair warning, the story does mention a pretty terrible farming accident. It doesn't go into graphic detail or anything like that, but just a fair warning, it is there. The story takes place in late fall 1976. I was 11 years old and never missed the bus to school. This day I missed the bus, and my dad said he was too busy to drive me the 20 miles to school. I stayed home, worked on my schoolwork, and did some chores around our farm. This year we had a very wet spring, so crops were in late. So my dad is out in the field harvesting field corn. It was getting close to noon, so I go in the house and start lunch, knowing my dad will be coming in for lunch any time. By 12:30, he isn't in for lunch. This man had a stomach you could set a clock by. I head out towards the field to see why he is late. I see him staggering towards the house like he is drunk. I wasn't alarmed, just wondered what was going on. Why is he walking like that? He is finally a few feet from me and raises his forearms towards me. It took a few seconds to understand the blood all over his clothes, and the fact his arms no longer had hands on them. He had the presence of mind to have shoved both hands into the bucket of axle grease we had by the machine shed. I'm assuming to stop the bleeding. I ran in the house, grabbed the keys, and get him into the truck. I had been driving around the farm and back roads for a couple years now. We set off for the nearest hospital, in a 20-year-old farm truck with the 3 on the tree. It is about 30 miles from where we lived. It just so happens there is a river with a drawbridge you have to cross to get into this town. They are in the process of building a higher bridge and getting rid of the drawbridge. So as you can imagine, they have moved the original road, narrowed the lanes, and all the usual construction stuff. I get about a mile from the bridge, and traffic is at a dead stop. The bridge is up for an approaching barge. My dad is in the seat moaning and going in and out of consciousness. So I am in our farm truck and pull off the road. I start driving through the construction area to get to the head of the line for bridge traffic. I am honking like an idiot, waving my hand. The workers are yelling but moving aside. One guy pulls his truck across in front of me and jumps out cussing me out. I later found out he was the foreman. I had to stop when he blocked me because of Caterpillar tractors on each side. He comes to the door, yanks it open, ready to kill me. He saw my dad and yanked me from the seat, threw me in the bed of the truck, and is screaming in his radio. The man was doing about a dozen things simultaneously. His workers are running ahead of the truck to where the line of cars are. He is on the radio telling the bridge operator to stop the barge and lower the bridge. Not in a minute. Do it now. All this probably took him a minute to 2 minutes. To me, it was only a moment. He drives the truck up to the bridge. Here comes the original Karen. This lady is burned into my memory. She is driving a Cadillac, huge bleach beehive hairdo, cigarette in her claws, and the bitchiest face I've ever seen. The construction guys have been telling her to back up and move so they can get the truck onto the bridge. They explain the injured man in the truck. I hear this bleached cow yell she doesn't care. The injured man can wait. She needs to get to her beauty appointment. The foreman tells her he will use a caterpillar to move her if she doesn't move willingly. She refuses, stating "Do you know who my husband is?" At that point, our truck is about 2 inches from the side of her car. My dad holds up his hands. She apparently saw the blood, grease, and the fact the hands aren't there. She faints. The foreman and his guys put her car in neutral and push it into a ditch. The foreman drives us to the hospital. He is also on his radio telling whoever he is talking to that he wants the cops there to arrest her and her car towed for putting someone's life in jeopardy. I don't know what all happened to her. I do know this foreman was a force of nature. So that is my story of dealing with the original Karen that spawned all the current Karens. Since I'm guessing some will ask, my dad's sleeve got caught in the gears of the corn picker when he was working on it, without turning it off. Once his right hand went in, he tried to pull it out with his left hand. He ended up spending several months in the hospital and many operations. In the end, he lost his right hand completely, and lost everything on his left hand but his thumb. He lived another 30 years after that. After a pretty heavy one like that, here's a more humorous one to lighten things up. Just trying to obey the dress code, sir. Make your choice. When I was in high school, I was part of a punk band that played regular gigs at a few venues around the city. We would regularly open for touring bands that came into town. I guess we were a bit of a novelty act since we were all like 15 years old and put on a good show. Well, part of being an interesting punk band is having a wild appearance, and as such I always had some kind of brightly colored mohawk or spikes on my head. So one day in the middle of the school year, the school sends home an updated dress code notice that now includes no unnatural hair colors or styles, and a few other annoying changes that were specifically directed at me and my friends. At the time, my hair was actually bleach blonde, so technically I didn't have to do anything. But when I got home, I remembered that I had a ridiculously plush, curly, gray granny wig that I had bought as a gag. That's when my devious little mind had a great idea. The next day at school, I showed up in combat boots with a plaid suit and my hilarious granny wig. First period, I had a really nice teacher who complimented my humor. Second period, I had a real hard-ass teacher who knew it must have had something to do with the dress code change, because we had actually argued about my appearance before. So I showed up early to class and had a seat. Class is about to start. The teacher walks in, gets everyone quiet and at attention. Then I notice him notice me. He calls me out. "Yes, sir?" I ask. "Take that ridiculous thing off your head right now." I comply. And as I take it off, my freshly dyed bright blue mohawk springs up. The look on his face was priceless. The whole class was stifling their laughter. We all knew he was going to have to choose. He just tightens his mouth, shakes his head, and says, "Whatever." I got to do this with every hard teacher for the rest of my day. Force them to make the choice between the devil and the deep blue sea. Inevitably, it seems I was able to make the rule unenforceable, and after a few weeks, other kids were showing up with unnatural hair as well. No one gave us much resistance after that. Alright, that's going to be all for today, guys. Thank you for watching, I appreciate it. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe if you haven't already. So have an awesome day and I'll see you next time.